Turin, Italy, June 23, 2015. Pilot Silvio Ceroto reports that while flying over a wheat field directly in the flight path of the local airport, he spotted a mysterious design seemingly pressed into the crops. Investigators are baffled as to how the design could have been created without any detection in such a high-traffic area. To date, it remains a mystery, but it is only one of the latest examples in a strange phenomenon that has been going on for decades, and possibly much, much longer. Over 10,000 crop formations have been found worldwide. They have been reported in over 50 different countries and on nearly every continent on Earth. Commonly known as crop circles, the formations are designs pressed down into fields. They range from small circles to elaborate pictograms hundreds of feet across. They have been found in various crops, including wheat, barley, oilseed rape, and corn. And they've been making worldwide headlines since the mid-1960s.
One of the first in 1966, it was Tully, Queensland, Australia. A farmer heard a buzzing sound and literally saw this big, round, maybe 30 feet diameter craft disc rising up out of what essentially was marshy, reedy ground. And it goes up and disappears and left behind the circle.
Beginning in Tully, Australia, there seems to be a kind of a smattering of these circular impressions, relatively simple, but in several locations around the world. 1960s, 70s, 80s, liberal sprinkling of circles. 1990, bang, and the whole thing goes planet-wide.
By 1991, over 2,500 formations had been reported across 23 different countries.
As an investigative reporter who began about 3 decades ago trying to get to the bottom of this phenomena, I remember getting these photographs and reading that there were no footprints. No one was walking around, because if they had, we would have seen broken stalks. Everybody was raising this question: what in the world is making these patterns and why?
They had scientists and meteorologists in the fields, and it was really fascinating. People really got into it in a big, big way.
Nobody knew what to make of this. Politicians, scientists, the UFO community, everyone was scratching their heads and saying, what's going on here? What is this? Some people thought that it was extraterrestrial. Others thought it was a meteorological phenomenon of some sort. And other people said, well, it must be a hoax.
On September 9th, 1991, 2 retirees from the English countryside, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, came forward with an admission that they were behind the crop formations. Using nothing more than a board and strings, the hoaxers demonstrated their technique for pressing down the crop to form a design.
I won't forget when the news came that there were these 2 men saying they were responsible for all the crop formations. And immediately, because of all the work that I had been doing, was, well, they weren't traveling to 23 nations, number 1. Number 2, they were off kilter, they were not geometric. And for those of us who have been in real crop formations, there's just no comparison.
Doug and Dave, the men that conned the world, that was the headline in our local newspaper here. And these 2 men came forward, said, we've done it all, we've made all the crop circles since 1976, everything. Most people pretty much swallowed that hook, line, and sinker.
There are some theories that Doug and Dave were just government stooges. that the plan was to bring the whole subject into disrepute, to discredit it, and to make the media just go away.
But could it be that there is more to the crop circle phenomenon than a modern-day hoax orchestrated by pranksters? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes, and suggest that crop formations are not, in fact, a modern phenomenon at all, but can be traced back hundreds of years.
There's a report from the year 815 of the Bishop of Lyon, a warning notifying another priest who is going to take over his parish that the locals are involved in something he considers devil worship. They're gathering seeds in a flattened circle of the crops and using them in fertility rituals.
There are some very strange accounts in the 1600s. One of the original scientists, Dr. Robert Plot, reported seeing crop circles appearing on his land in Staffordshire, England. And he actually drew diagrams of what he was seeing. We also have the infamous legend in the 1600s of the so-called mowing devil.
One of the first crop circles ever reported was a mowing devil that was in England going through the wheat fields. There's actually a woodcut that shows what, for all intents and purposes, looks like a crop circle, but has this black creature that just runs around with the horns. So the idea was in folklore that something or someone laid down this formation in a wheat field. And that goes back all the way to 1678. Some even have suggested that there may be a description of a crop circle in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
In the Dead Sea Scrolls is a cryptic reference to a light that leaves a mark on the ground. Interpreters ask, is it possible that the marks on the land, specifically on the barley and the lentil, are crop circles?
Arecibo Observatory, Puerto Rico, November 16th, 1974. Early pioneers of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, aimed the world's largest radio telescope at a cluster of stars 25,000 light years away to send a transmission out into the cosmos. The coded signal consists of binary digits, zeros and ones, that form a message designed to notify other potentially advanced beings of our existence.
This message into space, it was encoded in what's called binary code because it's the simplest around. Listen, we're trying to send a message to the aliens, and because you don't know anything about them, you have to make this as obvious as possible. Now, here's the message over here that was actually sent in 1974, and it starts off with teaching the ABCs to the aliens. Well, not ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, because right up here are the numbers from 1 to 10, but in binary. And anybody who has thought about binary should be able to figure that out, including the aliens. Right underneath that is this funny thing here, has the numbers 1, 6, 7, and so forth. Those are the atomic numbers of the elements that make up our bodies: hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus.
The coded message also contained information about our DNA, the figure of a human, a graphic of the solar system, and a graphic of a radio telescope. For decades, SETI scientists wondered if their cosmic message would ever be received or answered. Then, nearly 27 years later, there appeared to be a response. Hampshire, England, August 2001. Next to the Chilbolton Radio Observatory, 2 crop formations appeared in a field. Both were unlike any other ever found.
They were both pixelated, meaning that when you're on the ground, you couldn't perceive what the crop circle was, but once from the air, you could readily identify the pattern.
One of the crop formations that appeared at Chilbolton in 2001 was a face, but the other one was far, far more interesting because it greatly resembled the message that had been sent in 1974. There were very, very subtle differences between the two. They looked identical, but when you actually looked at them, the differences gave a key that seemed to be almost like an answer.
One of them was the fact that the human being that we sent out, when it came back, it had what appeared to look like some kind of grey alien with a large head and a small body. It also had a different system of planets, which suggesting it's a different solar system, and also had a different DNA sequence as well. And so just these three things really caught my attention because either it was a brilliant hoax, or it was actually a message that came back and was a response to that original SETI message way back in the 1970s.
And all of these suggested to the crop circle community and the media that we really had received a reply to the Arecibo message of 1974. Can we see it as a reply? Yes, indeed it was. But actually who created it and their exact purpose will remain a mystery.
Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the height of the crop circle phenomenon in the 1990s. Former University of Michigan research physicist W.C. Levengood and his team at BLT Research began scientifically analyzing samples from various crop formations found throughout the world.
The BLT team performed many different tests, from simple inspection under a microscope, chemical analysis of the soils and the plants, germination tests, node length measurements, and so on. They produced many lab reports and a couple of scientific papers as well, in which they explained what they found.
We found that there are two scientifically documented all over the world changes. The first is the apical node elongation. Most crops have 4 or even 5 nodes, and they are the knuckle-like protuberances that are found along the plant stem all the way down to the ground. The apical node is the very first node beneath the seed head. And that node becomes elongated, stretched, as compared to the control nodes in the rest of the field. Now, the node elongation can range actually between, say, 45% and over 200% elongation. The second visible plant change that is well tested are the expulsion cavities. Holes blown out at the lower stem nodes, usually the second, but sometimes also the third and fourth nodes. And literally, they're holes blown out at the nodes. Best I can tell, these visible changes are beyond the capability of humans at this point in time.
This is indicative of some kind of intense heat that has hit the stalk and actually physically changed it. Who or what would have done this?
Could the physical anomalies found within some crop circles be evidence that they were created with advanced technology? And if so, what might this technology be?
Pleasure to meet you.
In January of 2000, using his own data, as well as data collected by BLT Research, Dr. L. Joe Hasselhoff published a scientific paper suggesting that the formations might be created by an unknown electromagnetic energy source.
So you've actually done scientific analysis on some of those formations. So what were some of your conclusions?
The hypothesis is that somehow electromagnetic energy is involved in the creation of these crop circles. And that somehow this energy causes node elongation, so that the nodes and the stems get longer. And the more energy, the longer the nodes are. And that is very interesting because all you need to do is take a cross-section across a circle like this and measure the node length in each of these positions. And actually this is what you see. This is at the perimeter. See these nodes, these dark areas? This is somewhere halfway, and that's in the center. So you see there's a huge difference in node length.
It's a huge, this is fascinating. This is incredible.
It is not just a little bit.
Okay.
It's a difference in size between a horse and an elephant. It's very, very significant. So you can actually make a graph of this. So this is the node length at the edge, and the node length is about 2 millimeters. So this is in the center of the circle, and the node length is like 4.2 millimeters. You're going towards the perimeter, that's about 2 millimeters. You see there's a massive change in node length. It's actually more than twice as long.
Yeah, what would do this? That's
well, in this case,
weird.
It was very interesting because this crop circle actually had an eyewitness when it formed. And the eyewitness says, I saw a ball of light and it was standing still. And that is very important because when a ball of light is standing still, we can very accurately predict how the energy will be distributed on the ground. We know that there will be more energy in the center. And the more energy, the longer the nodes are. And we can also predict what the node length would have been. So you can check your hypothesis. And in this case, it was a perfect match.
Wow. See,
amazing, isn't it?
No, this is where I get the goosebumps because clearly there is something there and no one denies that many of them are man-made, but then there's something bizarre. Do you have any idea how or who might be behind it?
That's a very difficult question. What I can say about that is I don't know.
So it is something that remains a giant question mark.
Absolutely, yes.
I find it very disheartening in a weird way that something as open as crop formations are not studied closer by the scientific community. That they are just offhandedly dismissed as flat-out hoaxes from the get-go, when there is concise scientific evidence that not every crop circle is man-made. Maybe the origin is extraterrestrial.
"90 miles west of London, in the county of Wiltshire, the English countryside remains pretty much as it has for thousands of years. Small farms, stone walls, and rolling green hills provide inhabitants with an environment of peace and stability. This historic region is also home to a large number of ancient sacred sites, many built thousands of years ago.
It's an ancient sacred landscape where most of them occur. There are monuments that you know about: Stonehenge, Avebury, Silbury Hill. This is one small area that seems to be a manipulated landscape that was done thousands of years ago, where sacred rituals have taken place.
But in 1978, Wiltshire's tranquil landscape became the focus of a controversy that persists to this day.
Today, alongside the tracks of farm machinery, a new set of circles were found. No human tracks lead to the markings.
There, carved in fields of wheat, barley, and rye, were elaborate geometric patterns. Even more curious was the fact that, much like the famed Nazca lines of Peru, the designs were only visible from the air.
When you see it for the first time, you go, what in the world is that doing there? I mean, it's obviously not natural.
There have been cases that have been traced back for hundreds of years, the so-called mowing devil, where apparently some sort of devil supposedly mowed a field in a single night, but they became recognized as a phenomenon only when these circles started appearing in English wheat fields. They were very simple things at first, but they kept occurring year after year, and each year they seemed to get a little more elaborate. One of the early theories was that there was some kind of whirlwind that was making them, but as they became more elaborate, they also became associated with paranormal activity, particularly UFOs. Some people said they saw a light in the field at night, and some people began to read that as a UFO presence.
This circle in a Wiltshire field is just one of 200 such markings to have been discovered in the last 6 weeks. To farmers and scientists, how they're formed or by whom remains a big mystery.
Not surprisingly, the region became the focus of intense interest from UFO enthusiasts and skeptics, each offering explanations as to who or what was responsible for this strange phenomenon. But if in fact, alien beings from another planet were responsible for the crop circles, why were they making them in England? Were they trying to contact us? Or were there clues embedded in the designs? And was the proximity to Stonehenge and other ancient sites of any particular significance?
So you have the idea of these earth energies and these ancient structures, and then the crop circles are appearing around them. And many of the crop circles appear to be some kind of signals, ancient writing.
The crop circles are calling us back to a time before science and spirit got separated, when we were whole, we had a sense of wholeness. And here they're landing near sacred sites that are from an ancient time when we did experience those things.
When I saw the first photographs, I was haunted, actually. Are these extraterrestrials doing this? Are we dealing with somebody who knows how to bend space and time? Our entire relationship with the universe and quantum physics and all of its complexities has been pushed hard by crop formations alone.
Certainly, it is one theory that extraterrestrials are trying to communicate in a big way through popular media. Crop circles do get in the newspapers all over the world. Perhaps that's what they want.
These are being carefully designed. They're not accidental, both in terms of the shape and where they land. These aren't accidents. There's a mind behind this that's making these decisions. Where's that mind? What kind of body is it in?
Scientists struggled to find an explanation for the phenomenon until in 1991, two self-proclaimed British pranksters, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, came forward and proclaimed that they were the ones responsible.
They showed how they could make crop circles in a single night using some very simple tools. And at the time, people said, well, that must be the explanation for it.
Nevertheless, some researchers remain skeptical that a single pair of elderly men could have created literally hundreds of designs in the dead of night with little more than a few boards and some rope.
You know what was very effective? You still will run into people, crop circles, oh, forget about them. Those two old guys made them. Come on, don't be so naive. They were done by those two old guys years ago. Why are you paying attention to them anymore? Very effective piece of disinformation.
During the years that followed Bauer and Chorley's confession, crop circles continued to appear in the English countryside and at various locations around the world. Some were inarguably the work of artists or jokesters. But after studying soil samples and grain dispersion patterns in the disturbed farmland, researchers concluded that it would be impossible for all of these designs to be man-made.
Well, in what we would consider to be a mysterious crop circle where we can't identify it being made by people, the lay is absolutely beautiful, the lay of the crop. It's like a million carpet layers came down and put these stalks of grain down right parallel to one another. It's just a gorgeous thing to behold. When the hoaxers make them, they tend to be sloppy and messy because they haven't got that same force. They're doing handmade manipulation, which doesn't lay them down quite as beautifully.
In 1991, noted biophysicist Dr. William Levengood put forth a startling new theory. After spending 10 years studying crop circle sites and samples, he concluded that they were created by a complex energy system, which he called a spinning plasma vortex. that comes down from somewhere high up in the atmosphere.
Biophysicist Levengood has now analyzed 350-some samples from crop formations in his career. Now, if Levengood were sitting here with me, he would say, all I can do is I can take you from the ground, I can take you from the crops, up. But I can't tell you what sets in motion that spinning plasma vortex in the first place. It's still a huge mystery.
The anomalous things that happen inside crop circles are, in fact, one of the indications that you're in a so-called genuine circle. Because indeed, the weirdest things happen. Batteries fail, brand new batteries. People go in with cameras. Cell phones don't work.
There have been people who have started reading all kinds of messages into these crop circles, that they have some kind of digital significance, that you can read the kind of numerology and there'll be a kind of message. People are really reading something into it.
In terms of who or what is delivering them, we have no way to know that. We only have science fiction that tells us what's coming to visit us. So we have to just speculate about where this might be coming from. We have to wait for whatever the source is to introduce itself to us.
Are we dealing with time travelers? Are we dealing with spiritual forces from some dimension we don't understand? Are we dealing with advanced intelligences that are not even in this galaxy, that are from someplace else? And is this a form of communication? The conversations keep getting more and more complicated.
Crop circles are contact. We're being contacted. Just because we don't have the bodies to shake hands with, we have the evidence that the bodies have left us. I'm absolutely convinced that crop circles are evidence of intelligent life. There is intelligence bombarding us, winking at us, waving.